28 nations issue joint statement demanding immediate end to Gaza war. According to the Associated Press, a coalition of 28 countries including the UK, Canada, Japan, and Australia issued a joint statement on Monday condemning the inhumane killing of civilians and the drip-feeding of aid in Gaza. The statement, which follows the deaths of over 1,000 Palestinians seeking aid since late May, calls for an immediate ceasefire and insists the war must end now. The Israeli government rejected the statement as disconnected from reality, while the U.S. has not joined the call, deepening Israel's diplomatic isolation. Russia launches one of its largest aerial assaults on Kyiv. According to the Associated Press, Russia launched a major aerial attack on Kyiv early Monday, hours before Western defense chiefs were scheduled to meet. Ukraine's Air Force reported that Russia fired over 400 drones and 24 missiles, killing at least 2 people and injuring 15. The assault, which targeted civilian infrastructure including a kindergarten and a subway station entrance, was described by Ukrainian officials as a clear message of intimidation ahead of talks to accelerate weapons deliveries to Kyiv. Military jet crash in Bangladesh kills at least 31, mostly children. According to Reuters, a Bangladesh Air Force F-7B GI training jet crashed into a school campus in the capital, Dhaka, on Monday, killing at least 31 people and injuring over 170. The military confirmed the pilot was among the dead and that at least 25 of the victims were children. The Chinese-made jet reportedly suffered a mechanical fault shortly after takeoff, crashing into the Milestone School and College while classes were in session, marking one of the nation's deadliest aviation disasters in decades. U.S. envoy criticizes Israeli strikes in Syria as poorly timed. According to the Associated Press, U.S. envoy Tom Barak stated Monday that recent Israeli airstrikes in Syria were poorly timed and complicated regional stabilization efforts. Barak emphasized that the United States was not consulted on the decision, which Israel described as a defensive measure. The public criticism highlights a rare divergence between the U.S. and Israel on security matters and came as Syrian government forces redeployed to halt deadly clashes between Druze and Bedouin groups in the Sweda region. UK launches world-first sanctions regime targeting people-smuggling gangs. According to the BBC, the UK government has announced a new sanctions regime, the first of its kind globally, specifically targeting people-smuggling networks. The measures, effective Wednesday, will include asset freezes, travel bans, and exclusion from the UK financial system for gang leaders, corrupt officials, and companies supplying small boats for channel crossings. The move is a central part of the government's plan to disrupt the business model of criminal gangs profiting from irregular migration. EU to formulate retaliation plan as US trade stance hardens. According to Bloomberg, European Union envoys are meeting this week to prepare retaliatory measures in response to a potential no-deal trade scenario with the U.S. With President Trump's August 1 deadline for new tariffs looming, the EU is preparing to use its anti-coercion instrument, which allows for broad countermeasures. The ongoing trade dispute is projected to have a significant impact, with one estimate suggesting a potential $2 trillion hit to global GDP by 2027. U.S. Treasury Secretary escalates pressure on Federal Reserve. According to Bloomberg, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Monday called for a review of the Federal Reserve's non-monetary operations, including a $2.5 billion headquarters renovation, accusing the central bank of mission creep. This move intensifies the Trump administration's pressure campaign on Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who has faced public criticism and threats of removal from the president for not cutting interest rates. The attacks raise concerns about the erosion of the central bank's political independence. Japan's political uncertainty clouds economic outlook after election. According to Bloomberg, Japan's political and economic outlook is facing heightened uncertainty after Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's ruling coalition lost its majority in the upper house election. While Ishiba has vowed to remain in office, his weakened position complicates efforts to pass legislation and negotiate a critical trade deal with the U.S. ahead of the August 1 tariff deadline. The instability has led to volatility in Japanese markets, with analysts concerned about the government's ability to manage rising prices and geopolitical risks. UK gives final approval for £38 billion Sizewell C nuclear plant. According to The Guardian, the UK government has given the final go-ahead for the Sizewell C nuclear power plant in Suffolk, a project with an estimated cost of £38 billion. The plant, expected to be operational in the 2030s, is projected to power 6 million homes and is a cornerstone of the UK's energy security and net zero strategy. The government will be the largest shareholder, but the project's cost, which has nearly doubled since its proposal, has drawn scrutiny. S&P 500 and Nasdaq close at record highs to start major earnings week. According to the Associated Press, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite edged up 0.1% and 0.4% respectively on Monday to close at new record highs. The gains were driven by strong earnings from Verizon and optimism ahead of reports from tech giants like Alphabet. The market's resilience comes despite significant geopolitical risks and trade uncertainty, with investors focused on signs of corporate and consumer health. The Nasdaq has now hit a record high for 6 consecutive trading sessions. Bank of England governor defends regulation amid government criticism. According to Reuters, Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey on Tuesday defended the bank's regulatory framework, pushing back against the new finance minister's characterization of regulation as a boot on the neck of businesses. Speaking to lawmakers, Bailey affirmed the importance of post-financial crisis rules, such as ring-fencing for banks, to ensure financial stability. The exchange highlights potential friction between the central bank and the new government over the future direction of UK financial policy. Gold prices rise on trade jitters and Fed uncertainty. According to the Associated Press, gold prices climbed to their highest level in over a month as investors sought safe haven assets. The rally is being driven by a weakening US dollar, mounting uncertainty ahead of President Trump's August 1 tariff deadline, and growing market anticipation that the Federal Reserve may move toward interest rate cuts later in the year. The movement in gold contrasts with the optimism in equity markets, signaling underlying investor anxiety about the global economic outlook. Bank of England links rising UK borrowing costs to US policy. According to Reuters, Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey told lawmakers on Tuesday that the recent rise in UK government borrowing costs is a global phenomenon and not unique to Britain. He attributed the trend to global uncertainty surrounding trade policy decisions and fiscal policy, specifically referencing the impact of US tariffs and tax cuts under President Trump. The comments subtly deflect criticism from domestic policy and highlight the interconnectedness of global financial markets. Sweeping cyberattack on Microsoft SharePoint compromises 100 organizations. According to Bloomberg, a global cyber espionage operation has compromised about 100 organizations by exploiting a vulnerability in Microsoft's SharePoint server software. The victims, primarily in the US and Germany, include government agencies, universities, and energy companies. While the perpetrator is unconfirmed, Alphabet's Google has reportedly tied some of the activity to a China nexus threat. Microsoft has issued security updates and urged customers to apply them immediately to mitigate the ongoing attacks. UK government retreats on Apple encryption demand after US pressure. According to the Times of India, the UK government is backing down from its demand that Apple create a backdoor to its encrypted services. The reversal follows intense pressure from the Trump administration, which had warned the move threatened vital UK-US technology partnerships and compared the request to actions taken by China. In response to the initial order, Apple had withdrawn its most secure cloud storage service from the UK market, and the dispute had created significant diplomatic friction between the two allies. Over $80 billion in investments target Pennsylvania for AI and energy. According to the Associated Press, President Trump on Tuesday promoted a wave of over $80 billion in private investments in Pennsylvania aimed at establishing the state as a hub for artificial intelligence and energy. The initiative involves major tech companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft partnering with energy and investment firms to build massive data centers powered by dedicated natural gas, hydroelectric, and nuclear facilities. The administration is framing the push as a national security imperative in the AI race against China.